So we're going to jump back into the testimony of Elaine Cottam to the Post Office Horizon IT inquiry, where she's pressed more on the audit data and is indeed presented with emails between Post Office lawyers saying that she was indeed in possession of the call logs, and she seems a little bit angered about the suggestion and accuses somebody else completely different. It was Jim Cruz who sent the email, but she seems to bring up Roger Harrison, who hasn't appeared in the evidence that's been presented to her here, which is a little bit strange, but she is robustly defending the audit process that went on, saying that the auditors looked at everything, even though she doesn't actually know what they did. Let's jump into the inquiry.
Can we move forwards, please, and look at poll 2011-8242. And look at the second page, please, and scroll down, please. You're not included on this email chain. It's from Jim Cruz, a Post Office lawyer, to Mandy Talbot, another Post Office lawyer. And it's about the Cleveleys Post Office and Mrs. Wolstenholme. To give you some context, Mr. Cruz's email says, this case started back on the 17th of January 2001 with an email query from the then personnel department about the above office when the subpostmasters contract was suspended on the 30th of November 2000, as there were a large number of error notices on losses and gains. At that time, the losses were £14,000 and the subpostmaster was refusing to make them good, blaming the losses on the Horizon system, which had been introduced in February 2000 at her office. That all seems accurate so far. She was given 3 months' notice, and her remuneration for the 3 months due came to about £19,300, which was set against the losses. An attempt was made to install a temporary subpostmaster at the premises, but negotiations eventually broke down. But Mrs. Wolstenholme had by then made a claim for rent for post office equipment remaining at the premises after the 30th of November. The claim was not accepted, and as it was felt to be in both sides' interest for the equipment to stay whilst there was a chance of a temporary SPM being installed. On the 7th of February 2001, the subpostmaster's partner, Mr. Harrison, asked if ICL, that's Fujitsu, could look at the computer system as he believed there were problems with it. On the 23rd of February 2001, RH, I think that's Roger Harrison, refused to allow the safes and the Horizon equipment to be removed from the post office, which Post Office Limited wished to do as the claim for rent had been made. The refusal was because of the dispute with Post Office. Mrs. Wolstenholme asked for proof that the losses were her fault and caused, I think that should be, and not caused by computer failure. She also asked for copies of all error notices, but Chesterfield said these weren't available. And then this. On the 27th of February 2001, I advised Elaine Tagg that because of the allegation of computer failure, the printout should be obtained from the National Audit Team, showing a full audit trail at this post office. On the 28th of February 2001, Elaine Tagg told me that she had the call logs for the office. Is that correct, that you were tasked by...
Well, that's quite damning here. I mean, there's a lot to unpick here, isn't there? So they've basically kind of said she won't make good the losses, so that's one of the reasons, that's the main reason that's bothering us at the moment. Given a 3 months notice, but then had the losses deducted from that, so not really giving her a 3 months notice. I mean, you would like to think that that had been repaid by now in 2024, some 20 years later, but I would presume that that's not happened. When it's your business premises, I guess if you've got equipment that's been left there, then that's a perfectly reasonable demand to say you want some compensation for it, you want some rent. I'm sure the post office would do the same. But then Post Office, in a matter of months, seemed to do an about turn and say, well, far from now wanting to keep the equipment there so we can install a temporary sub-postmaster, we want to take the equipment away now, which they refused to let happen whilst the dispute was ongoing. So, I mean, it seems like a bit of a spiteful approach to that, really. You know, if you take out the rent part, which seems like a convenient reason, I mean, they refused the claim anyway, so they weren't paying rent and they didn't believe they were going to pay rent. And there's no indication here that they were being taken to court or any further action was being taken to make the post office pay rent. But within a matter of months, the post office are going from saying, well, the equipment should stay because we might get a temporary SPM in there, which presumably would be better not only for the post office, but possibly the sub-postmaster as well, to, well, we'll take it away then. So clearly stopping any attempts to put a temporary SPM in, following the difficulties they're having. But, you know, they're doing the right thing here. They want Fujitsu to come and look at the computer system as they believe there were problems with it. And to be fair, Mrs. Wolstenholme, when she asked for proof that the losses were her fault and that they weren't caused by computer failure, she's entitled to that proof. That's what you're basing your accusations on. And the error notices, which seems to be a smaller part of it, but something that Elaine Cottam wants to reference, aren't available a matter of months later. I mean, this is evidence that you're using to bring a claim against somebody. Surely they have to be available. Surely if they're in any place, they'll be in the case file. And then it kind of blows a hole a little bit in Elaine Cottam's testimony that she doesn't have the call logs, because it would seem, at least according to Jim Crews, a post office lawyer, that he's kind of saying she did have the call logs for the office. So whether she got them herself or not is irrelevant. She was in possession of them, certainly by February 2001. And then it seems to go on to say, I wrote to Mrs. Wolstenholme with a letter before action over unlawfully detained goods at the post office. Proceedings were issued for delivery of the post office limited goods. By this time, Mrs. Wolstenholme had made an employment tribunal application for unfair dismissal and reinstatement. I'm not surprised. I would too. A defence and counterclaim were received and the case was passed to Waitman's in June 2001 as the case had been transferred to Blackpool County Court, which was the case that they're talking about bringing now. Absolutely kind of eye-opening and shocking insight into what was going on post-suspension at the Cleveley's post office.
By this post office lawyer to obtain a full audit trail for this post office, and you replied that you had got the call logs for the office.
That letter, I wouldn't have written that letter. It was, if it's gone from Jim Crews to Mandy Taylor, that would have been drafted for me. Just to be clear, sorry to speak over you. This isn't a letter written by you or suggested to be a letter written by you. This is an email between two people referring to something that one of them says he did with you, namely asking you to get a full audit trail, and you replying saying you had got the call logs for the office. Yeah? And he said that, did he?
Yes, you can see it on the screen.
Who said I had them? Roger Harrison said I had the call logs, did he?
No. Mr. Crews said to Miss Talbot that you had got the call logs.
Well, I don't remember that. If I had the call logs, they would have been in the Cleveley's file that was delivered to Leeds area office by myself, because everything that I had following this case, I personally took to Leeds in the file.
She spent a lot of time hand-delivering letters, which I don't know whether it says something considering she worked for the post office.
Would the audit trail or the call logs for this branch only have been obtained after suspension and after termination?
I don't know. I can't remember that.
In the absence of audit data or call logs, what was the evidential basis for the suspension and then termination of Mrs. Wolstenholme's contract?
Because at the moment it does sound very much like we've suspended her, we've terminated her, oh, this is getting serious, we're heading to court. Better shore up this case now to make sure it's watertight, because at this moment in time it seems anything but when this email's sent on the 17th of March 2004.
I'm looking for the official wording for this because I don't want to get this wrong. I think it was... I don't know where it is, but somewhere it was about refusal. Within it was about refusal to bring... and I can't quote this and say absolutely, but it was refusal to bring error notices to account, fault accounting, and what's the other thing? Refusal to use the Horizon system. Did I say that? There were several things.
And I'm essentially asking is, by the time that those several things were decided upon, had you obtained a full audit trail for the post office concerned?
I wouldn't have done that. The audit team would have gone in and they would have done all that, the full audit trail.
And what did auditors do? Did they just check stock and balance on the day that they went in?
They did everything. They checked everything.
What does everything mean?
Well, everything that they would need to do. I don't know what an audit team did when it went in. I know it checked cash and stock. It used to go back through to, in some cases, they would recall pension documents to make sure that they were listed correctly, they weren't overstated or understated. Where else would they go to?
I wonder whether they ever found that they were understated, because presumably that would mean that they owed the sub-postmasters money. Has there ever been a case where they've paid a sub-postmaster because they've apparently not claimed enough money? That would certainly be an interesting thing to find out.
They would look at all remittances in, remittances out. So that's what the full audit trail would do.
And what product did you get from the audit team when you were deciding whether to suspend or to terminate?
I can't remember.
Or was it done by way of conversation?
It was I can't remember. The audit team might have a record of it.
The fact that this might have only happened till a year or two after the dismissal is quite shocking, to be honest.
It would have been done over the telephone originally, and I would have gone to the contracts manager and said they'd had the audit or whatever,